It is the 12th of the 7th, 2025. The time is 5 minutes past 8, meaning, therefore, as always, there are very many F1-centric threads at which we need to pull, not least of which is Maximilian Verstappen's whereabouts. What does it mean for Max Verstappen's future? Is he signed or isn't he? We'll talk about causation, what Christian Horner potentially plans next. Is it Alpine or is it Scuderia Ferrari? So too, we'll talk about what caused him to be sacked in the first place. Andrew Benson of the BBC saying that the Checo Perez instance, as it was linked to the misconduct allegations, was mission critical. We'll talk about all of the aforementioned. So too, we'll talk about Scuderia Ferrari in the next 30 minutes or less, because people are now arguing as to whether the SF25 has been designed in the image of one modern day journalese, or whether it's Lewis Hamilton's car and rolling it forward. What does it need to be next year? Is it Sir Lewis Hamilton's car in 2026? Because he's got the experience, the 7-time champion. Do you know what I mean? Or do you build a car in the SF26 in the image of modern day journalese? It's going to get techier than techie things, of course, as per usual. In the first instance, let's talk about Maximilian Verstappen a little bit, because it got techie yesterday, didn't it? We went through a gazillion slides where we talk about Ralf Schumacher. He said that there was going to be a meeting of minds between Max and Toto, that they were going to discuss future opportunities for Maximilian Verstappen to sign himself a big effing contract with Mercedes Petronas, or Mercedes AMG Petronas. And Ralf Schumacher's not too bad when it comes to these things, particularly when we're talking about Red Bull things. He called Tsunoda-san, he called Danny Rick, so too he called Lawson. And so when you see that Maximilian Verstappen was taking off from Nice to go to Sardinia, it's like, hang on, this all makes sense. Touchdown yesterday. And of course, the speculation ran rampant that Max was having a cheeky conversation with one Toto, the boy who cried wolf. I showed you this yesterday, and it gets techie here. This is sometimes, you know me, I always say all F1 publications are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. Sometimes you got to go back and do a bit of debunking. I'm not sure whether this isn't just AI, I will be honest with you. Some say that Soiree is Toto, the boy who cried wolf's yacht. Some say that this is bogus. Yes, Yep Olsen and Thomas Mayer are two of the god-tieriest ones as far as journalistic integrity. There was a post today, again, AI settings, showing Maximilian Verstappen and Toto, the boy who cried wolf, getting on the same private jet. Yep Olsen debunks that. He says this is nonsense, this is fake. So too yesterday, the report saying that Maximilian Verstappen has already signed a contract with Mercedes. Fake, fudging news, and this needs debunking. This is the Wild West out here as far as F1 news, and that's why you've got to put on your investigative cap each and every single turn. Sometimes you've got to defer to the goatiest ones. Here's what Yep says. The screenshots are taken from 2022. Photoshop settings, Zandvoort Grand Prix. The original post included AI generation of Toto Wolff kit, yet blah blah blah. So again, it was meant to be a joke, but people with a view to get attention photoshopped those out and ran with Toto and Max getting on the same plane. It's techie. And then you come to learn that Kelly Piquet has been posting Instagram shots on a couple of different accounts. They just look like, I've got them in front of me, I should have loaded them up. They just look, to my money, like they're on holiday, chat. Is Max killing two birds with one stone? Has he gone to Sardinia on holiday and then touched base with Toto in transit? Is this just what Maximilian Verstappen does on the mini summer break? It's techie, I'm telling you. This is very, very chaotic. Lose the hat. John, I'd love to, mate, but I'm still too insecure about what's underneath it. At some point in the not too distant future, I will do it. Go on then, let me tell you about Christian again, because I feel like this story is interlinked. There is no Max going to Mercedes, or at least the extent of it diminishes if, of course, there is Christian Horner still at Red Bull. Why is that? Well, because Team Verstappen put forth a supposition, and I think it looked and sounded something like this. If Christian Horner stays, or at the very least his powers aren't diminished, currently he was Red Bull's team principal, come Caesar at the gate, head of marketing, head of tech, head of Red Bull Racing, head of, as near as makes no difference, everything. All of the decisions went through Christian Horner. And Max, Team Verstappen, said, you know what? This is an on. Christian Horner has been making decisions at the altar of his own self-interest for the longest time. And look what it's done to Red Bull Racing. Wheatley gone, Marshall gone, Adrian Newey gone, Cottonwood gone. They're all going. All of the god tier people that you need requisite to building a car and a championship worthy campaign are now gonzo secco, both finished. Red Bull Racing look very different now to what they did 36 months ago, don't they? All of the god tieriest one, the last front wing bender, the last airbender in Newey, they are no longer there. And it's no coincidence, therefore, that now all of a sudden the car is dog-ish. Checo Perez said in an interview recently that there is no coincidence that as soon as Adrian Newey did one of these and took his hands off of his Red Bull pen, all of a sudden the performance of the car started doing one of these. Why? Because Adrian Newey is one of the god tieriest ones. He's a race engineer, come performance engineer, come engine engineer, mechanical aerodynamic goat. As soon as he takes his hands off the Red Bull Racing pen, of course you're going to lose lap time. Of course you're going to struggle to troubleshoot for the multitudinous travails of an RB21 understeer setting, snap oversteer. Adrian Newey is the one who's going to be able to take a step back from a step back even, and understand how to solve for these issues in real time. Now he's not there. Of course, the car's going to do one of these. And speaking to Checo Perez, I was listening to Andrew Benson again, one of the go-tiest for my money in the no F1 journos. I was listening to the Checkered podcast where he does a deep dive on Christian Horner and all the chaos that ensues there. He referenced one Checo Perez. I think this is important, chat, as we understand why Christian Horner was ultimately sacrificed at the altar of Lauren Mekies. Here's how I remembered it. You'll recall, for those of you with a discerning guy who were in tune at the time of all the madness in 2024, misconduct, allegation gate, and again, potentially still some common law ramifications in the UK, allegedly. But when all that stuff kicked off, you will recall there was one driver who backed Christian Horner to the hilt, and he had a name. His name was Checo Perez, aka the Mexican Minister of Defense. It went something like this, if I recall correctly, around the time of the livery launch, or the livery launch even that year. All that anybody wanted to talk about was Christian Horner. What do you think about the allegations? Do you support your team boss, your team principal wholeheartedly, Checo Perez? Checo was like, you know what? I do. Unequivocally, I'm supporting that dude. Christian Horner is the team. I think we just want to go racing. He says, obviously there are some things going on, but the most important is that we will stick together as a team. We will work well. And the main goal is remembering that we are here for racing. We are racing. We all love it. Do you see the tone and intonation of Checo Perez's statement? Max wasn't doing that, not for love nor money. What, you want me to come out and stand diametrically opposed, orthogonal to Nostradamus Verstappen, my father, the dude who brought me here in the first place? You're having a laugh, aren't you? You remember Mohammed Ben Sulayem begged and pleaded Maximilian Verstappen to come out in support of team principal Christian Horner. Max wouldn't do it because by extension, he'd be coming out and speaking out against his father. No dice, wouldn't do it. Loyalty has always been front and centre, a central tenet of who Maximilian Verstappen is and was and always will be. Would not do it. Checo Perez, on the other hand, knew which he understood stakeholder management. He doesn't hold all the aces like Maximilian Verstappen, and he was vying for a brand new contract. However, his results that year around that time were dog doo-doo. He didn't deserve a 1 year, and he definitely didn't deserve a 2-year contract. Early June, however, just before the Canadian Grand Prix, this is what happened, chat. Do you remember? Just before the Canadian Grand Prix, before which, by the way, Checo Perez's results were rubbish. I'm going to read them out to you, chat, for the just that we refresh our memories. The Canadian Grand Prix, Checo, so again, just after having signed a brand new contract, Checo retired, DNF. Monaco Grand Prix, DNF. Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, 8th. 4th at the Miami Grand Prix, China 3. So that doesn't necessarily, to my money, demand or warrant a 1-year extension, let alone a 2-year chat. Christian Horner, CEO, sees it at the gate, gave Checo Perez then a 2-year contract. Why? In June of 2024. It can only, in my mind, if we're leveraging Occam's razor just a little bit, it can only be out of loyalty. The fact that there was one driver at Red Bull who defended Christian Horner in his lowest of trough, his moments of need, and that dude had a name, and his name was Checo Perez. That's the only reason why Christian Horner would rubber stamp giving that fella, at this point in time, early June 2024, a 2-year contract, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. And sometimes when you make those decisions and Checo Perez doesn't deliver, that there is no payback, no upside on making a sacrifice as Christian Horner did, then sometimes there will be ramifications for that. Don't believe me? Well, let me show you. Andrew Benson on the Checkered Flag podcast.
But let's not forget.
Let's pull this. Andrew Benson on the Checkered Flag podcast had this to say about that circumstance, that in and of itself, re-signing Checo Perez on a 2-year contract, notwithstanding his not substantial material underperformance season to date, was worthy of being sacked in and of itself. Ignore all of the other misconduct allegations. Roll the clip, Cameron.
Situation. But let's not forget that even the Perez situation on its own could be considered enough for executives who run Red Bull to start asking serious questions. Let's just rewind for a minute. Around about Monaco last year, they signed Sergio Perez to a new 2-year contract, taking him to the end of 2026, when there was no obvious or good reason why that should happen. His form had already started to fall off, as it had the previous year. They didn't need to give him a 2-year contract. He would have signed a single-year contract. And by the end of last year, they paid him off to not drive for them for 2 years. And I'm told that number is 18 million euros. So, and then they bring
18 million euros is how much they needed to pay to satisfy and settle Checo Perez's contract. 18 million. What the hell? I agree with Andrew Benson. That is absolutely a sackable offence in and of itself. Ergo, the decision-making of Christian Horner at Red Bull as Caesar of the gate of a team principal for the longest time has been woeful. Ergo, he was going to lose the confidence of Charlie Mavidra. There's that 2% thing that we can talk about another day. But it all makes bloody sense. It's surprising. Let's listen to what the rest of what Andrew Benson has to say, because, again, more enlightening than usual.
Bring in Liam Lawson, which people questioned at the time. Should it have been Lawson? Should it have been Yuki Tsunoda? Got rid of him after 2 races. Replaced him with Tsunoda. Not significantly better. Neither of them obviously better. Quite considerably worse, in fact, than Perez had been, even though Perez was struggling. So you've got a whole bunch of issues there. You've got questionable decisions about driver choice. You've got a misunderstanding of why the second driver isn't performing. You've got an inability to stop the second driver underperforming. And then you have got the rest of the picture going on as well, with the team declining and all the other stuff we talked about. So in some ways, it's actually a surprise that this situation hasn't happened earlier, you know? And I think that's why I thought about a few minutes after the sort of initial impact of this had settled down this morning. Obviously, there was an immediate sort of buzz of adrenaline as I was starting to get some messages earlier this morning. Oh, have you heard Horner's gone? And of course, I was trying to stand the story up. And in the process of trying to stand the story up, I was nearly there. And then the statement came out, because we have to be super sure, Harry, in the BBC, that we're absolutely locked on. Whereas some other media publications can take slightly more risks than we can.
Yeah, no, I agree. In the first instance, let me address Andrew Benson's parting shot. You are old media, sir, so you can't take the risk that the likes of me as new media can. I would argue, Andrew Benson, that that's a disadvantage in 2025. We're more agile, quicker. We can talk to it. F1's a conversation. It's not just bloody news. In the second instance, you hear Andrew Benson, again, one of the go-toest ones as far as in-the-know F1 journalists. Again, all F1 journalists are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. In my opinion, Benson, people say British bias, etc., but Benson's one of the goodest ones in inverted commas. And he's saying that was a sackable offence in and of itself. 18 million. But it may as well be bloody 80. That's a lot of money for poor decisions. They didn't need to do that. Surely give Checo Perez a 1-year extension, a 2-year extension, 18 million out of the coffers of the shareholders. For what? For poor low-level decision making again. Again, we spoke about it yesterday. That there was a feeling at the Bulls that are red that this had no longer become Oracle Red Bull Racing, that it was more Christian Horner Racing, that he was making decisions at the altar of his own self-serving. And you cannot, no, you shouldn't do that. I would argue that the Checo Perez decision, that the decision to extend that dude by 2 years is your exhibit A, B and C. Christian Horner figured that he would repay a debt, since a Lannister always pays his debts, and there is such a thing as loyalty. Checo backed him when it was peak misconduct allegation gate, and he needed to repay that debt, didn't he, Christian? But ultimately, sadly for Christian, that might have resulted in the end of his tenure of Oracle Red Bull Racing as team principal. Oh, the humanity is techie. Go on and let's talk about this Maximilian Verstappen thing, since you guys, nothing's been signed just yet. There are conversations happening. Don't believe me or what you see on Twitter. Believe Toto, the boy who cried wolf. Again, for context, it's important. There is nothing new here. No material variable change as versus 2024. Summer break. There were conversations had between Toto and Team Verstappen over the course of the Miami Grand Prix weekend. We know that there were conversations had. Ralf Schumacher told us that there would be conversations had over the course of the mini break. And that's why some say, if word on the F1 curb is something in which you can be invested, that's why Maximilian Verstappen flew over to Sardinia, the same place where Toto, the boy who cried wolf, was at, so that they could have a conversation. Some say that it's signed, it's done, that Max Verstappen has already effected for a performance club, freeing himself of his contract. I don't think that's true. Here's why. July the 31st is rumoured to be the date at which Maximilian Verstappen can effect for performance clauses. The performance clauses look something like this. I'm going to give you a couple permutations. If Max Verstappen is outside of the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship, as at the 31st of July, then he might be able to null and void it. If he's outside of the top 3, then he might be able to null and void it. And then as far as the constructors are concerned, if they are outside of the top 3, then he might be able to null and void it. So 2 of those, the latter 2, are in play, are they not? Or they will be as at the 31st. So it gets techier than techie. I would be honest with you. I need to put some more respect on to Checo. He might be coming back. If Jonathan Wheatley's to be believed, he said that Cadillac would have him. Sauber would have him, apparently. Like, what am I like him very much, but we never miss a chance to bash Checo. I think I've been quite nice, Jorge. I just don't think he wasn't right. Not that Liam Lawson has come in and performed better, nor has Tsunoda-san. Nobody's like, do you know what I mean? They had an opportunity to rubber stamp their opportunity, to make a claim. Neither one of them have outperformed what Checo was capable of. But the point is this, Jorge. Checo Perez's performance up until that point, Jorge, you're a legend. Checo Perez's performance up to that date didn't warrant a 2-year. That's all that we're talking about here. Full stop, new paragraph. Was he good? Was he better than anyone that's come since? Was he better than anybody else on the grid potentially? Potentially. But had he done enough to warrant not 1 year, a 2-year extension? I would argue not. And that therein lies the point, and therein lies the reason why Charlie and Mavidra had to start listening to the murmurs and the rumours at Red Bull that Christian Horner was putting himself above the betterment of the team. Max can trigger the clause since he drives the car. Jorge, it's techie. It's going to get chaotic. Go on, let me tell you about Ferrari stuff, because there's been some Ferrari things going on. People are arguing about who they need to build the new car in the image of. Do you do it, Sir Lewis? Do you defer to the championship experience, 7-time champion, Mount Rushmore of F1? Do you give him Do you? I don't know. Even as I'm putting forth the question, I'm not quite sure. Go on, let me read it before we go for Rory. Let me read out some of your comments because we're going back and forth here. It's all important. Not all Lewis Hamilton fans are abbots of unreason. I'm with Cam. Love seeing Lewis win, but I'm a Lewis fan because I enjoy watching a good driver. Huge respect for Max and what he's doing. Ralph, I feel like we're in the minority. You know, to be honest with you, there are lots of the abbots of unreason are thriving, not just in the Lewis Hamilton fan space, in the F1 fan community. It's techie. Go on then. Let's talk about Lewis and Ferrari, because I've been reading lots of different tweets. In the first instance, Dr. Obbs spoke about the probability that Ferrari are going to be able to deliver a car in 2026, a power unit more precisely. Dr. Obbs, legend, closer to Red Bull and its circumstance than you or I or we, said words to this effect. The Red Bull powertrains in conjunction with Ford are struggling. That's the rumour, that Mercedes potentially have the whip hand since they've expedited for the efficacy and efficiency of their power unit pole position in 2026. Scuderia Ferrari second, they lock out the front row as far as how well they've gotten to grips with their power unit. And this is pertinent if we're having the conversation under the umbrella heading of, do you prioritise Sir Lewis or Charles Leclerc into 2026? Now, some will say that they've got the same driving style. Build a fast car and both of them will be able to drive it. You've got the best driver pairing on the grid. So what's the big hoo-ha? Well, the big hoo-ha is this. They don't drive exactly the same. If you build a fast car that doesn't favour Lewis Hamilton's last of the late breakers style, do you know what I mean? Super aggressive turning, V-line setups, then Houston, we have a problem. Lewis Hamilton isn't going to like it if you don't give him the rigidity of the rear suspension that he so needs and weaponises into medium and high speed turns. Then Houston, we have a problem. That's why you get the likes of Ralf Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya now coming out and saying you need to prioritise Sir Lewis, because there is one man on the Ferrari team who knows what a championship winning team and car looks and feels like. He has a name, and his name is Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. But then you've got the Charles Fossey there, like, what are you talking? Don't you see Charles' performances, all apart from last race, that he's been brilliant? Yeah, he's made a couple mistakes, but he's still the guy. If you're going to build a team as at 2025, July of, with a view to win a championship, and you have Charles Leclerc in it, then it needs to be a Charles Leclerc car. There is no, they will say, of course, and this is rumour, you can argue this between now and the time when the cows come home, they will say that there is no driver on the grid point to point quicker than Charles Leclerc, that the reason why he crashes so much is because he pushes it so hard each and every single day. I don't know where I stand on this. Maybe there's a line of least resistance, a line of best fit SF26 car that they need to build. Maybe, I don't know, but they need to do something. And maybe Christian Horner goes over there and becomes team principal, superseding one Frederick Vasseur, fulfills the dreams of Ferrari CEO John Elkann. Maybe he goes over there and sorts it out. But then you heard today somebody famous and in the know said, you know what, the second that Christian Horner goes over to Scuderia Ferrari, Sir Lewis will do one of these, put down his pen, hang up his Nomex and retire, because he hates Christian Horner that much. Although, if Lewis Hamilton sees a Christian Horner appointment through the lens of productivity, through the lens of maximising for his chances of winning an unprecedented eighth, a first drivers' championship for Scuderia Ferrari, then I think we might be having a different conversation. For the avoidance of doubt, say whatever you want to about Christian Horner, but he's always been a get-it-done type of guy. Yes, he's made some very, very dodgy decisions. Yes, his conduct is a bit techier than techie things, some may say. Does he like racing hard? Does he like to overstep the line? Is it, as Bernie Ecclestone said, that Christian Horner's just been hanging around with the young kids too long and not acting his age? I think all of the aforementioned is true to a greater or lesser extent. But does that mean that Christian Horner isn't a get-it-done type guy, that he couldn't go over to Scuderia Ferrari, move over to Fiorano, drink some red wine and eat some Italian pasta and get something done? I think John Elkann would want to consider that properly. Oh, and by the way, if we're talking about rights, it's techie. How can you build a car around a driver when active area is completely new? What a driver might like might not work with 100% cryptic. But yeah, I think you build from the ground up, you build it with a driver in mind. I don't think that Adrian Newey always says that he likes to just build the quickest car, and the best drivers will always be able to get their head around it. But I'm not sure that's quite true. If you know, if you've got a Max Verstappen as an example, of course you build the quickest car, but you've got to make sure it's front endy right, that it's on the nose. If indeed you want to get the quickest, the lowest lap time as far as the symbiosis of Max and RB21, surely if you're building from the ground up, John, you're a legend. Hamilton and chat Ferrari would be a very dead combo. OCH would be a very dead combo, says John. Oof. Both with something to prove. Deadly combo. I agree with you, John. Stand corrected. I was going to disagree then. I think it would be a very deadly combo. Lest we forget that Christian Horner is now full of rage and vengeance. He's nothing, has never ever been anything, if not vengeful. Christian Horner will come to get it, and he'll want to put it on. Of course, he'll want to put it on Red Bull at that 100,000%. Like Horn Boy in Italy with all them beautiful. I know it might not work out too well, to be fair. Jorge, you're a legend. To have your biggest rival become your ally, what a blessing. Lewis would be smart to be welcoming of it. Can you imagine seeing them come out together and take their bloody, like, what are we like? Unbelievable settings. Go on then. Let's talk about these news rights. Or TV rights even, because globally there's a couple of things that are happening. F1 TV is apparently set to be available in the UK. What? For the longest time I thought Sky Sports had the exclusive rights. Your boy over here will need a cheeky NordVPN if I'm going to buy £150 worth of F1 TV. But instead, your boy over here chooses to consume his F1 through the lens of Sky Sports F1. And that costs a lot of money, anywhere up to 90 to 100 quid when you go all in on the bloody HD TV package or whatever it is. Now, however, F1 TV Pro apparently is going to be made available in the UK. What are we doing? This is a game changer, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. And then you come to realise that this isn't just the UK. This is across the board where things are changing. ESPN are no longer keen on the bloody 80 to 90 million pounds or dollars worth that they're going to have to fork out to maintain exclusive TV rights in North America. It's not ESPN. It will be Apple. Apple have launched an offer of anywhere between 125 to 140 million US dollars per annum to Liberty Media to run the F1 TV rights exclusively for North America. Why have they done that? That feels like a lot of money, eh, Jomo? You're a legend. That feels like a lot of money, doesn't it? 140 million. Well, there is a reason. Brad Pitt's F1 movie film has gone gangbusters at the box office, so they see in it, in F1, that there is financial upside and potential going forward. Yeah, of course, the ratings have been stasis, 1.1 million, 1.2 million, 1.1 million now on average in North America. But going forward, if the F1 movie numbers are anything to be believed in, if you want to forecast, portend the results and the direction, the line of travel even as far as F1 viewership globally, and the F1 movie is anything to go by, then surely the trajectory is going to look more like this than this. That's why Apple realized that there is value, even if they are offering up 140 million US dollars per annum for the rights to F1 in North America. That might be a steal. It might prove to be a steal in about 5 to 10 years, especially if attention dollars on F1 keep doing one of these. It's techie. Apple TV runs at a loss. Yeah, no, that's why they need these things. It's going to get to, I'm telling you, it's going to be, listen, in all that I've read about Apple and the proposition of their entering the exclusive F1 TV rights business, North America, it sounds and feels like they understand it's not just F1, it's sports chat. Do you understand where I'm going with this? That there is a value in the seasonality of sport. You don't even have to do anything. There is no production cost apart from the 140 million that they're going to give to Liberty Media for the rights. They don't need to do anything. It does itself. The storyline writes itself. It's Max, it's Lewis, it's Charles Leclerc, it's Ferrari. its drive to survive. They've got all these narrative and plot lines, these content bits and bobs, pieces that create themselves, sans their investment or overseeing. Yeah, ESPN are gonzo, Ralph. They'll never match. Well, listen, if past his prologue, I don't think they'll match the 140 million that Apple are offering. So too, there's a lot of movement at the moment as far as F1 TV rights around the world. Globo in Brazil are going to start taking, they're going to be the new ones going forward, as well as people are starting to realise globally that there is upside, or at least there will be in the medium term, as far as attention dollars in Formula One. There is also, Viaplay's terrible. Oh no, silent now. Amber is nice today. What we did from Apple Car to Apple F1. Apple's MLS programming is gone. Oh no. Oh, I can say it's not so. Hopefully it'll be better than that. Also, F1 TV is not very good as well. It's had a major drop off in quality. Is F1 TV not very good? Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you, to be fair. I think there will be not a honeymoon period, but a period in which they'll need to bed in. Right, this is a honeymoon, and it will become a. They'll. I think give them time. They'll get there. Cameron Paul's passion. You're a legend, Jomo. I appreciate you, mate. I think they'll get there, but I think we need to extend them just a little bit of grace. ESPN just took on NBA, bought the rights. So go on, and here's what's going on, John, and you make the point. Netflix are throwing their hat into the arena, keen apparently to start and end very soon negotiations with UFC. Netflix have already bought NFL games over the festive period, right? Thanksgiving and NFL and NHL, right? Over Thanksgiving and the Christmas period, the festive period. So they realise that around these times, the viewing figures are going to do one of these. Netflix signed with bloody WWE $10 billion, if I recall correctly. So they realise that sports is just like this rich source of attention dollar that you can't really replicate, because again, the sport's just, you know what I mean? Every season, every year there will be an NFL season. Same with NHL. WWE kind of like, it feeds and fuels itself. The same with the UFC. The same with boxing. The same with F1. It's no different, right? And that's why you're seeing these big triple-digit million US dollar figures being bandied around when we're talking about TV rights in North America. UFC is dying in America. F1 going up. Is that what you think, really? Go on then, Lee. Maybe we could just take my money, says John, you're a legend. And what about Rob Camphius and Overloper? I don't know who that is. So go on then. UFC is struggling, Lee. But it always goes inside. As with F1, right, for me, if we're going to get philosophical for a second with sports, these things always go in cycles. In 2021, it was Max and it was Lewis. It's one of the most gangbusters seasons even, that you'll ever see in your life. It was just like, what's going on? This is incredible. Race after race after race. It crescendoed and it was Abu Dhabi. And it was bonkers and it was controversy. It was chaos. So it was always gonna peak and then trough. Such is the nature of seasonality, right? And not dissimilar to the UFC. You'll have seen that. I mean, Connor's gone. If you are a mixed martial arts fan, John Bones Jones is apparently gone. So who are the stars that are going to put UFC and mixed martial arts globally on their back and drag it kicking and screaming back to the mountaintop? Well, there is one, and he has a name, and his name is Ilya Topuria. He's the next star, and I think that it just happens like this. I think it's just the seasonality of life and all sports. It's going to get to UFC as a joke, says John. Wow, John, don't even do it. Don't even get me started on that, mate. That might be another channel at some point in a not too distant future. I mean, oh, Tommy Aspinall. Tommy Aspinall. What are you going to do? But again, it is the seasonality of life. We've got the best parts from Attitude Era that it got ripped 100%, Eddie. This is what happens in sports, right? What I've seen from the numbers and how Americans are, we are more hyped for F1 than for UFC right now, at least in the US. Golden era of UFC is about to be done. I think, Lee Duda, let's reconvene in the next 24 months when Topuria is doing very, very dangerous things and knocking out all and sundry. I think it travels in cycles. And I think the same can be said for F1 if we bring it back to the topic at hand. Like, I mean, is this season going to be gangbusters? It feels like it's blasphemy for me to talk about 2025. But with no Maximilian Verstappen by dint of the fact that his car's not sufficiently capable or quick enough, because you've got no Max Verstappen to hold Oscar and Lando's feet to the competitive flame. I think this season could be a bit of a... You need Oscar to have a brilliant season this season. You need for Oscar and Lando to fight. Like that's what you need to happen. If it doesn't happen, then it's gonna be chaos. Sadly, it's going to be monotony settings. It feels like it's going to be 2023 all over again. Two orange-coloured cars fighting between themselves, and nobody wants to see that. And again, the UFC was almost won by a duchy. The UFC was almost won. Go on then, John, enlighten me. So hit that like button. Joanna, you're an absolute legend. Going back and forth. Go on then, chap. In summary, the Max Verstappen story is still playing out. Now, I know there are other bits and bobs, and we'll talk to them this tomorrow morning. Upgrades are kicking off all over the shop. Red Bull haven't given up. They're about to bring floor upgrades, so I hear. But between now and then, it's all about Max bloody Verstappen. I know Gerard Godot was in the finals, UFC 1, John? I recall kicking the teeth out of that chap. What are we doing here? So go on then, in summary. Max Verstappen chaos is going on in the background. There was fake news come out yesterday even, that he'd signed and that it was full stop. New paragraph. It is not yet. July 31st is looming, 19 days away. At that point, we're going to start to hear news. Christian Horner leaving isn't the start and the end of the story. I imagine if word on the F1 curb is something in which you can be invested, I imagine that Team Verstappen would have gone to Charlie Mavija, to Oliver Mintzlaff, to Mark Mateschitz and said, you know what, we may not stay anyway, but if Christian Horner stays with the amount of power that he has currently, no one man should have all that power, then we will definitely leave. Now that Christian Horner's gone, the probability of Max staying goes from here to here, 100%. Absolutely, it's increased. But does that mean definitively that Maximilian Verstappen will stay at Red Bull through to 2026? I'm not so sure, particularly by dint of the fact that it looks like conversations have been had, and are still being had between Team Verstappen and Toto, the boy who cried wolf. How do you like yourselves, therefore, some F1?